Skills for competitiveness. Thank you all very much for being here with us this afternoon. I know it's been a long day. I know you've heard a lot, but I promise you this is going to be a nice one. I think all of the speakers that we have convened here are really, really good people. They're experts. They know what they're talking about. Now, afterwards you can say differently, but I think they know what they're talking about. And mainly, I would like to give big thanks to the EIT Higher Education Initiative, which is sponsoring this session, and which is represented in the panel by Dolores Volken, who is the head of the initiative. Now, before I give the word to Dolores, I will just briefly introduce the panelists that we have here. So we have Manuela Leiksho, cabinet expert at the cabinet of Commissioner Ekaterina Zaharyeva for Research, Innovation and Startups. We have Frick van Muiswinkel, Director of Entrepreneurship and Regional Partnerships at Utrecht University. We have Kasper Garos, Head of Public-Private Partnership Programs at Philips. And we have Maria Valerie Schegg, is that the correct pronunciation? Secretary General of the Young Universities for the Future of Europe Alliance, one of the European universities. Now, I think that's it from my side. Dolores, the word is yours. Please give us an introduction.
Thank you so much, Raffaele, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure to welcome you all here on behalf of the EIT Higher Education Institutions Initiative. This session is very important. Raffaele already mentioned it. It's skills for competitiveness. And today's discussion will focus on how higher education institutions can better align with industry to foster innovation and strengthen Europe's position in the global economy. We already know the Draghi report, the Heitor reports, both of them made it clear Europe's ability to lead, whether in emergent sectors or established industries, it really depends on building stronger, more effective links between higher education institutions and industry. But as we all know, this is not easier said than actually done. The challenge isn't just about establishing these partnerships, it is about ensuring they deliver meaningful impact and results. And this is actually where the HEI, Higher Education Institutions Initiative, plays a very important role. This initiative was launched in 2021 under the EIT, and it's coordinated by EIT Raw Materials. And our mission is really to empower higher education institutions to translate research into market-ready solutions, to foster these relationships with industry, to support new ventures, and also to attract investment. Our progress over the last 3 years actually speaks for itself, I must say. So we have supported over 350 higher education institutions, more than 380 industry and non-academic organizations across 42 countries. These collaborations have led to the creation of already 240 startups, with the startups and scale-ups actually supported through our projects, securing more than 14 million euros in investment. We have trained nearly 100,000 students, academics and non-academic staff on innovation and entrepreneurship, equipping them with the skills needed to thrive in the rapidly evolving economy. And there's more to come, actually. But we also know that behind all these numbers is a deeper story of every project we have, a story of partnerships, innovation, and overcoming long-standing barriers between academia and industry. Of course, this journey is not without challenges, and maybe we will discuss a couple of them during the session. Universities and industry often operate at different speeds, with different goals, and also with different expectations. But we are not standing still at the EIT Higher Education Institution Initiative. We are acting with purpose and with a vision for our future. We also recognize that we cannot do this alone, and that's why we're here. Rising to these challenges demands actually a very sophisticated, multi-stakeholder approach. So that's what this session today is about. We need to ask critical questions, and for that we have our wonderful moderator, and we have an incredible panel lined up here. So each bringing unique expertise, unique insights on how we can actually build a stronger, more effective partnership between higher education institutions and industry. And I'm really confident that we will not only talk about challenges, but also get an inspiration for actions. So thank you from my side for all of you to be here, and let's start the discussion.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dolores. Please, a round of applause. Now, let's get into the discussion, shall we? As I think it was also mentioned many times today, so last year we had these big reports, the Letter report, the Draghi report, and indeed one of the things that the Draghi report talks about is this connection between academia and industry, and the fact that we also need to be honest and say, okay, some of the things that we've done so far might not have worked, there's still something to do. So if we want to bring about this change, now in your opinion, and we will go through all of you, what is something that has to change in this relationship? What do one or both of the parts have to do to bring about impactful partnerships? And I will maybe start with you, Manuel, with a question. From the side of the European Union, or the European Commission, would you say, or would you see a trade-off between focusing on skills or focusing on valorization? And where would, let's say, the priority lie?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I don't see a trade-off at all. I think we're talking about the same thing. I think what we need to consider is a broader question, which is the evolution of research careers in general. So to go from the general to the particular, if you like, generally speaking, I think we need to consider the following. We have 2 million researchers in Europe. We are great at training researchers. We are great at producing knowledge. Where do these 2 million people go? They can't all stay in academia. Of course, there's no space for that. So we need to make sure that these highly trained people find their place in other sectors which are highly valued in the economy, and to also address challenges that we need to solve. So when we talk about research careers, I think it's central to talk about intersectoral mobility, for example. It's essential to talk about entrepreneurship, to talk about the industry academia relations. So I think, broadly speaking, we need to always consider this dimension. We started from the side of the Commission by making a proposal on a council recommendation on research careers that was eventually adopted by the council, which kind of launches some basis for this. We also did in parallel a few initiatives, such as a competence framework for research careers that allows researchers to assess their skills, but also allows universities, companies, industry who would eventually like to recruit researchers to assess the kinds of skills that they should be looking for. So this is a kind of work that we are pursuing and that we are intensifying. We're working now on an online tool to allow people to actually use this in an interactive way. In parallel, we also launched a call this year, which was, in fact, last year. This is already 2025, I keep forgetting, about talent ecosystems, precisely to bring together academia, companies, research organizations with a particular focus on the careers of early stage researchers to have stimulating and varied intersectoral careers. Now, these are all things that are more or less ongoing. I think we have to try to look a little bit further than that. And these are not necessarily things that always the EU has to intervene in and to solve, but we also have to take inspiration from some very good examples that take place in the member states. And I like, for example, the what the Austrians do with the Christian Doppler laboratories. A similar thing happens also in Norway, I just learned recently. There is a kind of a flexible possibility for a partnership between industry that needs a solution and academia that can provide research for that solution, and there's a mutual interest from academia in researching that particular area and from the industry who need a solution for whatever they are looking for. And these kinds of flexible partnerships, I think, are also very interesting. I mean, beyond the world of spin-offs, etc. So maybe I leave it at that for the time being. But I think we have still also a lot to learn from good practices in member states. Maybe part of our role in the EU and in the Commission is to bring that to the attention of all member states sometimes, and to disseminate good practices. So that's a first idea that I would launch.
Very good. Well, and in the audience, if you have good practices, please let them know as well. Now, from the other speakers, would you have a first reaction to this? You come from very different backgrounds, so we have academia, we have industry, we have an alliance of universities. From your side, also considering what you've heard, if you had a wish list, what should change in the relationship between academia and industry?
Maybe I can touch down on your remarks, because we did some preparation, of course, last week about the storytelling here, and then I was very stupid to tell you, maybe we have to align the agendas better. And that was the agenda in my mind at that moment, last week. Academia, what is your research goals in some faculties or departments in relation to the agenda maybe of the private partner? Then I thought, well, what a stupid idea, because the third agenda on the table, of course, is what will the next generation think about their role in future of Europe. And also this morning, Annelien Bredenoord tells something about, well, what about the idea of building a career in Europe, not only for your professional life, but also for your family life? And now you touched upon the fourth agenda, which is, of course, the policy agenda. So I have to recall my saying 2 agendas aligning. No, it's at least 4 and even more. But I would make the point that the talent where we're talking about and the skills part of the innovation agenda, we have to maybe talk to that generation. And this morning I noticed were less representatives of that category, like maybe a representative of a graduate school or a master students alliance or a fraternity, to really speak up what is their wish for the future, so they can be really placed very delicately in the agenda of the European policy. So that's a little reflection as from an old man over the last week on this topic.
Third and fourth agenda. My plan is off. So what you're going to see now,
maybe there's a fifth agenda.
We're going by hand. Casper, you're a representative of the industry and you work on partnerships. What do you think?
Yes, very interesting. So, thank you. I want to go back to the past first. So let's have some context here. Perhaps you do not know that FP1 was designed for competitiveness only. This was for companies. Most people here do not know that anymore. It was not my time yet, so I have to emphasize that, but that has been the case. So gradually, universities, research institutes became part of the framework program after, I don't know, five years or so. We have been, as Philips, since the start, so FP1, even the first project, we have been part. So we have been conducting 1,300 projects since then, and we're still monitoring them. My point is that since that time, and if you look to the role of academia, that has largely been expanded, because nowadays, if you look to companies, large companies and SMEs together, if you look to the funding, they only absorb only 28%, whereas in the past that was 100%. Yeah, so just to give some context to the framework program. But is this all necessarily bad for a large company? I would say no, because what we have seen in all these collaborations are the great ideas that we're producing together. So in all of our projects since, let's say, FP1, we have been working with academia, all of the projects, and it is very fruitful and beneficiary. And let me give some context here, because I often get the question, if you know what you want, you can just collaborate with whomever you want. It may go faster, right? So there are 2 aspects here. So normally a company would say yes, but keep in mind that the framework program offers you, of course, an ecosystem if you do this well. If you have an innovation you want to work on with a certain partner, it is bilateral, but you always need all kinds of legal arrangements with that particular partner, or 2 or 3. If you work in a framework program, you have a consortium agreement, right, with each other. So there is always complaints about red tape, and there are complaints about it takes a long time, but actually this is a benefit that people often do not appreciate anymore. Yeah, that's one. Secondly, what I want to emphasize, and that was also the discussion or the presentation this morning on University 4.0 by Robert Jan Smits. We are active in the region Eindhoven with a very specific collaboration with the Technical University of Eindhoven and 3 local hospitals. And why do we do that? It's not only the proximity, but with these partners we discuss our roadmaps in detail. So we do it in such a way that we share with the universities what we want in the longer term, and the university then also programs part of certain faculty programs to cater to that. Of course, you should always guard your academic freedom, and you should not overdo this, right? It's just a portion of what the university is doing. And then what you see in practice, and we will discuss some metrics later on, right?
Exactly.
That indeed the time to market is shorter. We even call this fast time to market. So we have a mix of collaborations. We work with the top universities everywhere, like Mayo Clinic in the US and Utrecht also in the Netherlands very much. But we also do it this way. And there are certain benefits in there, but my recommendation would be pay attention also to this presentation this morning, because if you team up and you get closer to each other, you make it less anonymous and you agree upon certain targets, you can go faster. And the targets should be a mutual benefit. University should really excel in that particular topic to make it attractive for companies to collaborate. And if they do so, it's not only the collaboration with Philips they then are bolstering, but thanks to this knowledge, they can also cater to much more companies, because they are getting some more knowledge about market access, about how companies are innovating. And very important in healthcare, which I cannot emphasize enough, is the regulatory aspect. Because universities think a lot, you know, we're doing a project and then we work with startups, and you know what, and here there's a product. But in the EU, there are 27 countries. In all those countries, these products need to be accepted. So large companies have a lot of experience with that and also have the skill to then really make a success out of that. Let me just pause here.
Very good. No worries, no worries. We will have time to debate. But we talked a lot about industry, we talked a lot about academia. Valerie, there's also a society out of there. So what is the views from the University of the Future of Europe? You're very much involved in that.
Yeah, I very much agree that we came a long way with the framework program when it comes to academia-industry collaboration, but I still would have some wishes on my wish list. And I think one wish would be that we diversify a little bit more the partners we were working together. I think now academia-industry collaboration focus very much on technical fields, on tech talent. And I think while tech talent and innovating together and producing patents is great, I think there's another dimension which is important. I think recent examples have shown that tech talent alone is not enough if that tech talent is without moral compass. So I think there are coming some other skills we should create together. Sometimes they're called soft skills, which I do not like so much. But yeah, we really need to make sure that we create talent, which is also creates a benefit for the society. And I think Draghi makes a point in his report about this, that yes, the push for innovation is important, but it has to go along with our cohesion policies in Europe. And we have to focus for example, on education. So I think while diversifying the relationships we have with non-academic partners, they also have to come in earlier, not only at the research level, but earlier in the education level. And I think when we concentrate on these cohesion policies, where, by the way, I think the European Universities Alliance can play an incredibly important part, because we can make different regions in all the 27 member states, so not only in the strong urban areas, we can make Europe more competitive.
Thank you. Dolores, now coming from the experience of the initiative and including, so thinking about what you've heard now, does that sound in line with what you're trying to do?
Yes, it does. And I would like to add, if we're all speaking about our wish list, then I would like to add another point from the perspective of our initiative. Because what we see when, projects, and it's not just about, one particular innovation and then going to the market. What the initiative is about is that we want to have projects act in 5 different areas, right? So first of all, it is about, the institutional change and, putting innovation and also entrepreneurship education more on the strategic agenda within the organization. The second point is about improving curricula for education for innovation and entrepreneurship, improving those, but also setting up new courses for students. And then it's about, as a third pillar, basically, it's about, these partnerships. And it's not just industry, as you said, it's also other partners within their region, depending on the actual needs within the region. And it is also about knowledge sharing. What we do, I would say differently within our initiative, is that we don't just fund one particular project, but we also try to let them collaborate, let them co-create, let them exchange about their difficulties, about their challenges, and they can learn from each other. As you said, there's one particular example within a country in Europe, and we have the opportunity with our projects to make that visible to others, to share these best practices, but also to share what is not working well. However, what we sometimes see at risk is that once this, funded opportunity, let's call it that way, ends, there's a risk that we lose within those organizations the momentum. And I'm specifically talking about universities because here there are different priorities, and we all understand that. But I think innovation and entrepreneurship education needs to be on the agenda as well. So we see, for example, in projects setting up vice rectors for innovation and entrepreneurship, which is great. You see that, the original idea coming from our project is transferred to, other areas within the organization. But still, you mentioned the 4th generation of universities, there is a big problem still with the rankings we have, right? Innovation and entrepreneurship is not necessarily, evaluated. It's not necessarily part of what the, university is awarded or incentivized for. I think there's still a lot to do in that regard, and I would like to see a change here because, there's no point of having a 2-year of funding and to start something that is good, but then it has to end because there's no funding and it's not high up on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Now, is there any feedback from the panel of what you've heard so far?
Maybe just one small comment, because what you were saying about the the collaborations and the time to grant and etc. I think is also something very important for us. And you went back to FP1, which I thought was helpful, and I'm going to pull up the history books when I get back to the office. But I think we need to go back. We need to look at what we were doing before, and I think we need to try to improve all the time. One of the things that I think we can already do today is certainly high on the Commissioner's agenda, is to simplify, simplification, is making things faster where they can go faster, recognizing the added value, as you were saying. I mean, yes, grant agreements are complicated, but they may save you time and different problems down the line, so there's a whole point to the things. But can we do evaluations a little bit quicker? Can we reduce time to grant? Can we simplify the application process for the applicants themselves? If we can do this already now, then that's something that we should definitely do. So in the 2025 work program, which is coming out a little bit later this year, we already make a first effort. In the next program, 26-27, we'll do a more radical effort. Always, and we would certainly welcome feedback about these efforts and about their effects, to see whether we're going in the right direction or not. So for me, it's quite important to, I know that this is not necessarily related to the discussion we're having, but I think it can become a huge obstacle to a program which is already oversubscribed and which already has a fairly low success rate. I think is very, very important for us to understand where applicants have difficulties and where we can make things easier, especially setting up consortia with universities, with industry, etc., which I know is heavy work for the applicants themselves.
Well, if there's anyone in the room who was working on FP1, please raise your hand, tell us what you were thinking at the time. That would be extremely helpful. Then you're a source of knowledge for all of us. But Freek.
Well, maybe there were some two remarks I would like to make. That, of course, university has to evaluate their own performance over the 100 years and more they have been on Earth, and of course they're changing a lot. And I think we have also the European Alliance of Universities nowadays, and they write these position papers, and they call something like, we will raise the change agents of the future, which is like the academic that has some more skills than just the single profile. And these category of students we have now in the house really are change agents, asking, for example, for more entrepreneurial education in every curriculum. So for our university, but that's for more universities, we have like basic modules of entrepreneurship now in the standard curricula. That's a good point, but that's the students asking for that skills and knocking on our door. But we also listen to the industry, and maybe also to your remark about more interaction with social science and social innovation. We recently coined a new master, medical humanities, where, well, the humanities meets medical faculty. And what is funny, that the first private partners coming in with assignments for our students, they are not pointing at innovation management or the med school, but they are all pointing at the School of Humanities, having difficult questions about how the public sees pharma companies in Europe or in the Netherlands. What about regulation, stuff like that. So all the students in medical humanities are now catching up these nice proposals for their assignments. So we are changing and listening to society, what we have to do as universities, I guess. And there are maybe many more examples of these, but these are just two.
Very good. Kasper, are you going to hire any of their students?
Yes, we are, but let me have 2 points. So first, thanks for your intervention. Of course, I think everybody here would, is not happy about the time to grant, to start with, right? And for industry, I would say Horizon Europe, the general program, is increasingly difficult because it's, of course, very prescriptive. And then you just have to fit a particular topic, and then you start to look for partners, or vice versa, you're being approached. So at least for my company, but I also see it at other companies, there's more interest with the joint undertakings. I see here 2 representatives of IHI, with whom I work closely. CHIPS joint undertaking, we're active. So yes, that is generally more attractive for industry nowadays. So that's just as a feedback, because time to grant is quicker, and of course the topics can be largely, or I should say partly bottom up. That really helps. So hopefully in FP10 that will be accommodated. But going back to talent, because I did not touch upon that yet, I gave you the example of our regional innovation with the Technical University of Eindhoven and 3 regional hospitals. But there we are collaborating in these projects with PhD candidates and with students. So talking about hiring, indeed. So these students, and particularly PhD students, candidates, are working on topics of mutual interest. So if these projects are ended, typically we ask them, the good candidates, whether they would like to join us. And often the answer is yes. So this is another way of fostering your relationship with a university or research institute if you have a common agenda, right? And that's really something I would like to underline here. Don't be afraid to collaborate with companies if you have a common interest in a certain area, a certain direction where you want to research on. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you also for making a proposal for FP10. It was on the bingo card of the moderators, so we try to have it in every session. We're talking a lot about industry also and academia, but Valerie, you have also the ADECO group as a partner of the youth initiative. What do they bring to the table?
Well, as I said, we try to involve them already in the educational part. So we just designed a joint bachelor on urban sustainability studies, and we kind of use our non-academic partners to be an advice and a mirror to see, hey, do we educate those kids with skills which are actually for the employment market really attractive, and will they find a job later on? So they help us there to shape our educational programs. But if I may, I would like to also answer to Frick, because you're totally right. The universities are changing, and they see more the societal aspect. Also because I think the new generation of students really asks for it. They really demand it. And if I may say so, I think the framework program still needs to follow a little bit. I mean, we are very happy that we have such a thing in Europe, but I think collaborative research is still asked to operate on too high TRL levels in many cases. So I think it would be great if we have Pillar 1 with the ERC, but also in Pillar 2 if we would have more funding opportunities in lower TRL levels, so that you show the appreciation for that research as well.
Very good.
Yeah, I agree. And also, you do like the bullshit bingo, eh? But you something like mobility programs.
I didn't say that.
I did it for you. No, but you called mobility as an aspect, and I think that's we cannot say that we can underline it even better than that. This is a motivational aspect of young career scientists. If they have some freedom to be, floating around between maybe academic. Few months in Philips and then a few months in hospital and then back to academia or standard university. That motivates them really to go into this business, because it's not a dull academic career. It's really dynamic. And if you bring that as a program and you facilitate mobility programs, and it goes further than the students only, it might also professionals working for a company who really have to, spice up a little bit and stay for a summer holiday in the academia. We are having lots of possibilities to keep the talent fresh and eager to contribute to the innovation agenda of Europe. And I think mobility is saying it all. It's very worthwhile to keep up that kind of programs.
Manuel, you mentioned the researchers' competence framework, right? And so let's say to have transferable skills from moving from academia to somewhere else. So recently, the competence framework for research management administration, or research RMComp, has been published, and that framework looks exactly like the researchers framework. And if you look at research management administration, I think many of us in the room as well, many of us have academic backgrounds, so either have a PhD or a master's degree. So it's funny to see that these are quite similar. And that there is a kind of a comparison. So it's not a question, but I guess I was so intrigued that was, let's say, kind of the same, and the model is also the same.
Yeah. I mean,
it's also mobility, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not that surprised, and it also, I think, reinforces our insistence, which fortunately the member states also shared, to include research management as part of the Council recommendation on research careers, because it is a part of research careers, and it's an extremely important part. Where I would differentiate research management from research as such is that it has an incredibly important role in terms of framework conditions for entities and institutions to be able to compete internationally at a European level for funding. And this we see very clearly, as I'm sure you know better than I do, that institutions who have robust research managers or research management structure with all the different kinds of professions, let's say, that exist within research management, are much more competitive in terms of securing funding. So I think it's a basic, it's a crucial aspect of the institutional capacity even of entities. Yeah.
I think it's securing funding, but it's also creating impact.
Absolutely.
Because we also have innovation managers and business developers.
Yeah, science communication, etc. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Question over there.
Hi, Miklos Jeffrey from the Hungarian Research Network. I have a comment and a question, a comment regarding FP1. FP1 was set up as Esprit, and Philips was one of the basic companies in this. At that time, Philips was manufacturing, among others, TV sets. Now this has gone to Samsung. So, but it has a more older history because it started in 1967 when Jean-Jacques Schreiber coined the term technology gap. Because Europe was lagging behind. We are still lagging behind, unfortunately. So, but this was the place of the comment. The question, I fully agree with the statement that medical devices are regulated differently. I'm not sure whether they are regulated differently in different member states, because we have a medical device regulation. But what I'm sure that this is applied differently in the member states. So they do not apply it in the same way. Now a question, it would be to Manuel, by the way, because there are a lot of gatherings of industry in terms, at least in this area, in which universities would be welcome to attend in order to learn exactly this problem, how to tackle the regulation of the market in their product development. So I don't know whether the Commission would be, I assume that it is not a big issue for the Commission as such, but the question would be whether the Commission would be interested, DGRTD, in order to issue special strengths for this kind of knowledge to be acquired by the universities, how to handle this part of the development process.
Thanks, Miklos. As always, you ask difficult questions, but what I would say is this: we are preparing, as I'm sure you know, the startup and scale-up strategy to be adopted a little bit later this year, June, July. Don't quote me on this. One of the work that we are doing now is of course gathering information and analyzing data. We have quite a bit of data from the GRC that works a lot on this, because one of the challenges when you try to prepare a strategy on anything is to find data, in fact, which can sound surprising, but on research careers, for example, we had to create an observatory with the OECD, which is now being developed. So sometimes we just lack the data and in an organized way, of course. So one of the things that we've found, which you will tell me, of course, everybody knows, but still we know things intuitively, but it's good also to be backed up by some analysis, is that the challenge of startups in Europe and the reason why they tell us many of them go to the United States is because of regulation, because of access to capital and access to markets. And regulation is probably, I'm not sure if there's a hierarchy among these three factors, but it's certainly a very important factor. So I think it is for us, and certainly for the Commissioner, with whom I've discussed this several times, it's a crucial aspect to look at. Of course, we have to strike the right balance between achieving certain policy objectives and defending the interests of, well, citizens in general, first and foremost, but also in not stifling innovation, in not stifling the development of our companies in Europe. So I think we have to do better in that, and I think we have to look at that very carefully. So it will probably be an important part of the strategy that you will see in a few months. It won't solve everything, but at least hopefully it will put set out the problem on paper in a coherent way. You were talking about medical devices. Indeed, we have legislation on medical devices, but as you know, you don't have certifying bodies in all member states, for example, and this is again something that companies tell us. Well, this is an issue that you have to go. If you're in one member state and you don't have a certifying body there, of course, this creates immediately an obstacle, and you have to go elsewhere to carry out that certification. So this is just one tiny example that you see in many other areas. So this will be a first step, a first analysis, and the basis for a discussion that will hopefully lead next year to a proposal on a European Innovation Act, which is still very much at the brainstorming stage. And here, again, part of our concern is not to create more regulation and not to create more obstacles, but to find the necessary areas to regulate which make lives easier for European innovators and European companies. So this is a little bit the direction of travel right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now, I know we had another couple of questions, but unfortunately I would ask if you could keep it for later on, because we do have something else that we wanted actually to talk to our panelists. And thank you, actually, Casper, for mentioning it before. Metrics. So when we talk about this and we talk about partnership, and then we say, yeah, we need them to be successful, but how do we measure success? What are the right metrics to define that was a successful partnership or not? And Manuela, you were talking a lot, so yes. I'm going to let you rest your voice for a moment. And Casper, maybe I would like to start with you, with the point of view of the industry. What defines a successful partnership for you?
Yes, well, with regard to the skills we have been discussing and the specific interaction with university, there are several. Patents, of course. Important, very important for industry and increasingly important for universities. But if you have a good arrangement with your academic partner how to deal with that, it can be very beneficial for industry to team up. So these are specific legal arrangements you can make. And for instance, we sometimes make arrangements with universities where we have a patent and we co-developed an innovation where we say, well, we will never market this. So then just transfer it fully to the university. But then, if there are patents where we definitely want to continue working with and working on and even develop products, that patent fully goes to industry. So these are, arrangements you can make, and that is very attractive for industry, but also very attractive for universities. Yeah, so that's one. So we keep a metric on that. A second metric is, of course, for the universities, publications, right? Very, very important. Don't need to call that out. The third one is the number of projects you're doing, of course, with that particular university, and what are the expectations. We have reviews with the universities themselves after the project has been finalized. And fourthly, and I already mentioned that, is of course the number of people you then attract, right? So in this specific example I've been giving you several times with the Eindhoven University and 3 regional hospitals with PhD candidates, we keep track of who is joining us and what is the target for this year.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think maybe from the academia side.
Maybe to add to the things you've already said, and also having some of these examples in mind from our industry, from our university, I think the duration of the collaboration is also something to measure. Sometimes we have a continuation of maybe 2, 4, 5 projects in a row, maybe 20 years, and then you really have the trust and to continue doing the right innovation pathways. And that is very motivating for the boards of university and medical center, but especially for the professors and the academics in this game, because they like to see follow-up, of course, in both basic science, but also they like to see the applications coming into their hospital, for example. So continuation, and then I made a lot of stupid remarks last week, but I thought also as a director of a faculty in the past that all this overhead when you start a new consortium, and all the time and negotiation stuff like that, that's boring. So another measure of success is if the overhead is really going close to zero and the project is flying. But that's a sort of image really technically from the overhead perspective. But then I really wanted to say that with a limited program management, it flows, and then probably you have really had the golden sort of bullet where to collaborate. And I think the relation with UMC Utrecht and Philips Company is such an example. I think I'm sure you manage it, but yes. It seems like it's going so smoothly, and then it's thumbs up for everybody.
It's really good to see the good partnership here on the stage. Valerie, from your side, what do you think are the metrics that define success?
No, I totally understand that measuring success on the basis of hard KPIs, of quantitative indicators, is always the easier way. And good numbers are always great, but I think you really should look deeper into the partnership and also look about the quality of the partnership. I think often partnerships are too much on the level of dependencies, and you also should really look, are we co-creating something together which goes beyond the pure financial win we might have at the end of the travel? And indeed, do we have the patience for a long-term partnership? I think this is very important. So the quality of the partnership, for me, that is something which really shows success, which is not as easy measurable as hard KPIs. I agree.
Yeah. Perhaps may I add,
yes.
this is completely true. Perhaps I did not emphasize that. Longer term relationships, then also there will be the trust, right? And then you just go quicker. I just wanted to add that. Yeah. No.
Well, Manuel, after hearing what you've heard now, and also thinking about what you mentioned before, the ERA Act and the Innovation Act, how do you think you would frame success from the Commission side?
I'm not sure the Commission is very good at framing success, but I mean,
why? I'm not going to ask why you say that.
What can I add to this? I think one of our concerns is generally that if we take a step back, right, is that there is that we really create a single market for knowledge that allows these collaborations to happen as easily as possible, and with and that we remove constraints and barriers. And probably one of the constraints is also on the side of researchers themselves, as to how research is assessed. The whole research assessment system, which is still very much based on publications, and of course here we're talking about completely different things. I think probably one of the key factors to stimulate industry-academia collaboration where it doesn't exist is precisely in ensuring that this is a valued element of the work of a researcher, which doesn't happen everywhere. In fact, I was talking to representatives of a university the other day. I won't say what university it was, not to be indiscreet, but who were telling me, why should we continue focusing on publications? I don't care if how many publications we have. Of course, they were exaggerating, but they were much more concerned with, are we looking at a future patent? Are we looking at even in fundamental research on how we can potentially apply this knowledge, even if it's not tomorrow or next year or in the next 2 years, but can we somehow look at measuring the impact or assessing the impact that this potentially could have? And of course we're talking about a different logic than the logic that underpins publications. They are necessarily certainly, but they may have gotten out of hand in recent years. So I think this is a little bit part of the equation. It doesn't necessarily address what you were saying before, but I think it's part of the equation changing the culture. And this is probably the most difficult thing to change. It won't happen with a piece of legislation, naturally. And that's why, in terms of research assessment, it's not the Commission doing the work and leading the work, it's the institutions joining this coalition, COARA, and discussing the changes, possible future changes to research assessment. And that's how it should be. It should not be a Commission initiative. In the future, indeed, next year we'll come up with a proposal for the Innovation Act, but also for the ERA Act. And the ERA Act will be very, very much focused on trying to implement what Letta calls the fifth freedom, and it's not an original term, of course, we all know that. But it is about removing obstacles to collaboration, ultimately. And so this is where what we want to see, and that's how we will measure, I think, our success.
Very good. The
With
success we will have. Yes.
Piece of legislation.
Well, very short comment. It's the narrative you're pointing at, the narrative of how excellent science will, at the end, will be profitable for the society. And we propagate a lot in our house that people make this narrative, whether you fail or not, have this narrative, and it has sort of a two-edged sword in a positive way, that at the same time you build this narrative, you build also trust in your region or maybe for the national government that, yes, I'm really concerned about that we work on something that should deliver value for society. So it's just maybe one piece of paper, but you have to rethink really what is your narrative. But then you have something very well, a nice document to frame your new initiatives, to collect your right PhD students and have a buy-in on that story. So I would say, make your narrative. But there are lots of people say, I don't like that. And the half of the university at least, or even more, likes to have this narrative. So we see also, again, change in the community of academics liking to have this narrative. So optimistic view on this part.
Very good. Can I be just the ignorant on panel here? Are there industry representatives in COARA, or is it mostly academia?
No, I think it's mostly research organization. I don't know to what extent there are industry. It's a good question. We're both ignorant on this.
Kasper, do you think maybe industry should be represented in research assessment, or is that to be left with?
I think it's more academically led. Does anybody know in the audience?
I
There
think
we go.
so.
Martin knows.
Very good. Yes, are there?
We were not allowed.
Okay.
Marta.
Mainly for academia.
It's for public-based academia. There are publishers that are like society-based, but it cannot be, as it is now, it's not open to industry because of the risk initially of kind of swifting the COARA principles and instruments towards even more profitable measures.
Okay.
This
So-
is a very passionate subject. I warn you immediately.
Yeah.
You'll open a can of worms.
Yeah. No. So then my question was just, Kasper, do you think?
Cannot import.
That's collaboration for you.
Quick question. So, do you think industry should be or is interested in research assessment?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion because I do not know exactly what this scheme is about. But normally I would say yes, but yeah, cannot say more.
Very good. We will close it here. I don't want any fight breaking out in the room. Dolores, maybe from the initiative. What is success? How do you define success? And have you had success?
I think we have a lot of, I think the time doesn't allow me to go into each and every project we have. And, we basically expect them to collaborate, not just with industry, with non-academic partners within our projects. But I think most of the metrics, the key factors were mentioned already here. So for me, I think for the initiative in general, it's a bit of a balance between immediate results or output and then having also a look at the, more long-lasting impact of our projects. And, for example, when we, invite consortia to apply, we do not just request for a strategy for the 2 years of funding. We let them explain how they basically transfer their results into a more, sustainable way within their organization, and we ask them to have a vision up to 2030, for example. And when we look at the success of academic industry collaboration, it's about, the number of publications, as you mentioned, joint publications, grants, but we also look at internship opportunities, for example, for students, mentoring, employability is it's a big topic as well. There are certain rankings out there, and universities are also more aware of that. How ready are students or graduates actually to go into businesses? And I think the ranking itself came actually from the industry partners, right? They looked into this. How ready are these graduates for working with us? So I think as I said, most of the metrics were mentioned already. And yeah, I think it's a bit of we need to look at the balance in between. It's immediate results, but then looking at long-lasting impact, because at the end of the day, it's people working together. It's about this quality of partnership and also the trust that needs to be developed, and that takes a while, right? So that needs to be built up.
Very good. Now, Marta promised you a question.
Thank you. Actually, my question was quite philosophical, because I get the feeling that we are discussing the present here, and maybe we should be discussing also the future, meaning building innovation capacity and meeting industry needs in higher education institutions, but also how does industry meets the needs of the higher education and research institutions? Because I'm thinking about the lifelong mobility that you were mentioning. In an ideal future, there would not be this linear talent circulation from academia to industry, but it would be like impossible to describe. So what are the real game changes that we need to make this impossible to describe scenario that I would feel would be desirable, but maybe you are not at the same opinion?
Now we have 5 minutes. So if you all have a brief answer, you're all invited to express your ideas.
I think here we're looking into a scenario where the mobility between career, the intersectoral mobility works in a much more seamless way. And I would say that this would be the ideal scenario, both for companies and for universities, that you have a much more flexible availability of workforce, if you like, or rather of talent. That this would enlarge the talent pool for companies, but also for universities. So I would say that this would be the ideal scenario. Will we get there?
Yeah, ideal scenario, but also with a risk, because I was thinking, well, the typical aspects of academia or schools of applied sciences, you learn some skills there, and you know how the world is working in an academic institution. But then you have the other side, what's happening in a private company with all their tips and tricks. If you make it like one big thing or one big ecosystem where people floating around, you might have the risk that you get somewhere stuck in the middle, that you don't know what academic excellent research is, you don't know what business is. That's just my sort of, in my head at the moment, is how far are you going with getting away from the silos, but that's something else that you can transport in between the silos and make little bridges or whatever you call it. But I still think that academia should still, do what they're good at, maybe create new knowledge, excellent knowledge, and also create new talent, whatever this will be in the future, nobody knows, but we are steering to something. But don't mix up like in a big soup. Well, famous last words.
Casper, you agree?
I fully agree. This is about excellence, right? So also excellence towards companies to have an interesting proposition, right? Because you ask, what is the responsibility of industry towards higher institutes? Well, on paper, there's none, right? Because companies need to make money. We have shareholders, and we're being measured. So this will definitely not be a KPI in the future. But of course, we have been discussing collaboration here very much. I want to make one statement because of time.
You have time.
Yeah, but it's as follows. So the news about the US, the Trump administration is, every day we talk about this. But what I do see in practice in Europe is indeed not only the willingness, but also the art to collaborate. We do this very well with each other. And please keep that in mind, because we're also involved in projects in the US for public-private partnerships with certain programs. And there is much more bilateral collaboration. So here you go much broader in a good sense, with regard to the topic, with regard to good and excellent partners. And we should not lose that. So indeed, we complain a lot about time to grant. We also complain about the level of funding, because in the US that's also higher. So it's way easier to do business in this respect for public-private partnerships in the US, really. But this part in Europe is still stronger. So please keep that in mind in your future plans. Collaboration across the entire ecosystem, meaning research, innovation, implementation, but don't divide it up. It should be, for instance, in Pillar 4, should be really nurtured. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you very much, Casper. Now, Valerie.
No, I agree with Freek. We shouldn't have a big soup, but I think we still should try to break down the silos and maybe take a spoon of the soup in very specific test beds. And I think there are test beds where the ways are the other way around. For example, when I take the example of challenge-based learning, the industry actually comes to us with real-world problems and asks our students to solve those challenges. And I think this is a very nice test bed to see where it also works the other way around. So let's have more spoons of the soup without falling into the pot.
That's very good. I'm starting to get hungry. So, Dolores, would you like to give a couple of final words?
I think my answer goes in a similar direction. Give the space to try out things and to, be open to experiment with certain formats, not to, as you said, fall into the soup, but then still have the space to, to be open and to try out things. And, with our project, we try to do that, right? We give them the space also to co-create with others and to, share their best practices, because we don't know what will happen, right? What will be needed in 20 years? But to be open and to try out. And also, this is another example, we learn, from the innovation sector or from startups is about, accepting that we might fail with one or two of these formats, but we still need to try out these things and learn out of this. So the learning aspect is very important.
Perfect. Thank you very much.